Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bringing the Work to Liverpool webinar. We're going to give everyone 1 or 2 minutes to just let them to join the call, and then we'll start the webinar shortly. All right. Shall we get it started? Okay. Hello, everyone again, and welcome to Bringing the Work to Liverpool webinar. My name is Yi, and I'm the Young Alumni Engagement Officer from the University Alumni Relations team. I'm going to host today's webinar. So I recognize some of your name. You attended our previous session in February, so you may be familiar with this webinar. For some of you, this may be your first time. So let me quickly introduce the format of this webinar, and then we can start the talk. So Bringing the Work to Liverpool, this online series, we rebranded this series earlier this year to make it specifically for our recent grads. So the topic we focus on is all about like everything related to early career development. So for today, we're going to have a panel talk. So as you can see, we have our three speakers here. And for the panel talk, it's going to be 40 to 45 minutes, and then followed up with a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for our panel, please feel free to pop the question in the chat box, and we can go through the question after the panel talk. So let me introduce our panel. Okay, so first of all is James Clayton, and he graduated from management school in 2023, and he's currently works for Toyota. And then the second speaker is Joseph Mableson, and he studied French and Italian and graduated last year, and he's a event coordinator, and he's also a media manager, but at the same time, he is a drag queen. And then our next speaker is Steph Preston, and she used to manage our university social media channels, and she's now works for TFL. So instead of me talking about introducing them, I'll let them to say hi to everyone, and then to talk about what degree they did at the university, and also their current role and their careers journey so far. I'll stop sharing the screen so we can focus on our panel. So shall we start with James? Because James, I know you just finished your graduate scheme, and I still got your old job title. So can you talk a bit more about your new role and also, your career journey so far?
Sure. So, hi everyone, I'm James. I graduated from the uni in 2023, as you said. I did a placement at Mercedes High Performance Powertrains, who basically build the power units for the F1 team up in Northampton. Then after I graduated, I was lucky enough to get on the Toyota graduate scheme, where I came down to Surrey. I did 6 months in Toyota Financial Services in HR, and then went to Kinto in Portsmouth in business transformation, and then back to TGB, Toyota Great Britain, for sales and supply planning. And then since finishing on Monday, I've started a new role in Toyota called Cost of Ownership Specialist. There you go.
Lovely. Steph?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Steph. So as you mentioned, I actually worked for the University of Liverpool, and I started that job after I graduated in 2017 in English at the university. It started out as an internship and progressed into me working in a social media officer role. And I ended up staying there for 6 years, nearly 7 years. And then I got a job at Transport for London, which is where I'm working now.
Lovely. Joseph?
Hi everyone, I'm Joseph. Um, I studied French and Italian with a year abroad. In my first year slash second year, I started sort of my drag career, as it were. It wasn't supposed to be a career, but it just happened. Um, I would say after my year abroad, it sort of became a lot more of a serious sort of career for me, and through that, I've sort of dipped my toes into lots of different sort of industries really, which is like social media management, events management, um, which has all stemmed from drag really. So I do a lot of different things at the moment. But yeah, mainly based around events management.
Lovely. Welcome. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining the panel. So, as I mentioned earlier, this panel we focus on how to build your personal brand. So, my first question is because you all from different industries and you have different role. So, what does personal branding mean to you? And also, if I ask her, can you describe your personal brand in one or two sentences? So, I'll start with Joseph.
I mean, I think that's quite a tricky one. Personal branding is obviously incredibly important, but I would say I don't think I realized until sort of the past year or two. Um, I think it was one of those sort of things, I'd looked back, or I like someone had mentioned a comment to me about, oh, your branding's really good, or your LinkedIn or whatever it was. And it sort of made me think, and I went, actually, you know what? I've been doing this for ages, but hadn't realized. And then it sort of made me more sort of but I think about all my branding a lot more, if that makes sense. And then it got better and better, if that makes sense to everyone. Um, and then to describe my personal brand, that's a difficult one. It depends. Here I feel like I should be a lot more professional, but normally if someone asks me, I like to say, because especially with drag, a lot of it is, what is your brand? What is your character? What is my character's called Genevieve? So it's like, oh, what is Genevieve? I like to say campy and stupid, but I think it's so important to find, that sort of brand that fits. In theory, Genevieve's my business, so that is the brand is sort of, campy, stupid, fun, takes the mick a little bit.
Lovely. But in terms of you also run events, so in terms of running events, like as a coordinator, what kind of like
I think
identity or like the brand do you have for that?
I've got to say, to be completely honest with you, it's the same. That's how I've made my connections. A lot of the venues that I work in or work with, the companies that I work with, it's through somebody I know who knows Genevieve, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I try and bring that sort of flirty, campy, stupid character to things to sort of stay on brand to myself. So, I mean, it's a tricky one, but then, I work with other performers who have a completely different sort of side to it, who are very serious, like modeling, that sort of, and it's so interesting to go out and see how different people sort of within my industry brand themselves because, it is a bit different when you're sort of, you're sort of a self-employed artist, and a character. You've got to brand yourself completely differently. And, we also compete with each other. So
Yeah.
if I'm with other people, we're all competing, but we all sort of steal bits from each other and see what works for yourself. Yeah.
That's lovely. So Steph, what do you think about branding, personal branding, and also what's as a social media manager? So what's your brand?
Yeah, so it's a similarly interesting question. I think for me, I never really thought about personal brand and how important it was until I kind of realized that you have to make yourself stand out in the professional world. And to do that, you have to kind of live and breathe your area of knowledge
Mhm.
and your speciality. So I think like that was kind of made quite blatant to me when in my first role I needed to create a space for myself in that work environment. And I did that by becoming the go-to like social media person. So to make sure I had a reputation in that field and was that person of like expertise that people would be able to come to me for that. And it ended up creating a career for myself in that area.
That's interesting. So, James, what about you?
Yeah, so I think again, interesting question. I think personal brand, similar to what Steph said, is a kind of about your skills, values, attributes, and interests, and staying like authentic, being authentic to you, I suppose. Um, so, and as Steph said, living and breathing what you do, I guess your area of knowledge. Um, so I guess if I was to describe my personal brand, I'd probably, well, I love cars, new challenges, and seeing the bright side of things, I suppose. I like to see myself as a bit of an entrepreneurial thinker. So I guess bringing like innovation to the automotive world is what drives me, I guess. But yes, that's what I'd say my personal brand is.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like it is a tricky question because when it's come to, you know, we know like because sometimes it's like it's easy to talk about, you build a brand for the company or like for your like Joseph, you have like your artistic persona. Like this is something like a business, like you can build the brand. But in terms of ourselves, like how we're gonna, express ourselves online and how we want people to see ourselves, like professionally, that's a bit like challenging for us to realize, the way to do it. So, but now I know social media became such like important like tool in terms of like promoting yourself, also marketing yourself as well. Into especially when you want to have a job or especially when you sort of like represent yourself, like in a professional way. So, how do you tailor your personal brand or professional profile through across those different platforms, for example, like LinkedIn, Instagram, or even TikTok, or like in person? And also, how do you make sure your brand is aligns well, is like work fine with your current role as well at work? So I'll start with James.
Um, yeah, so I guess tailoring it across the different online platforms. LinkedIn for me is quite a professional space. I know people use it differently, but for me, I like to keep it quite professional because you've got your potential employees on there, I suppose. Um, the other social media platforms I don't use too much. Instagram and Facebook I don't use at all. Instagram I post like sparingly on it, but that's more like personal and I keep it quite close knit and private. Um, I think when I'm speaking to people, or the way I see my personal brand growing is internally in the office when I'm speaking to people and meeting people around the office and maybe externally as well. Um, I think I just try to stay authentic and it's similar to my LinkedIn profile, but being nice and kind and positive. Yeah, I guess
So
that's
what
it.
do you always like share on LinkedIn? Kind of
Um,
like post on LinkedIn?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't post loads on LinkedIn, but it's more about uh, I guess what I've been up to at work and stuff around stuff that's happening at the office and at the company. Yeah.
Lovely. So Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm similar really. I think with social media managers, you do often get people asking you, oh, well, how many followers do you have online? I was actually asked it the other week. And I said, oh, well, I just cut a load of Instagram followers actually, because I do try really hard to keep my like work life and personal life separate. Um, I am a poster on LinkedIn and I enjoy um, using LinkedIn to be like a bit of a career highlights reel, where I share pieces of content or projects that I've worked on that I'm particularly proud of. And I make sure those posts have a bit of insight into the process that I went through, um, to make that content happen, so that it's valuable and hopefully useful for other people to see, who are also in the social media world. Um, yeah.
Lovely. Joseph, what about you? I mean,
Um,
it's a tricky one for you as well. I mean, like,
yeah, I mean, it's a really hard one. I'm quite envious, really, of Steph there. Unfortunately, you saw I can't really keep my sort of personal life away from my professional life because they merge so much. I mean, it's weird to get called Joseph like quite often, you know. And even my flatmate calls me Jen, so um, I think it's quite a difficult one because. You know, I've got my Instagram, which I think is probably most important. I call it like a drag CV or an entertainment CV, you know, your showcase, you know, your different looks, your different, you know, sort of entertainment, like you whatever you're doing, what gig you're doing. And you can be a bit more sort of risky on there, if that makes sense. I like to be funny, I like to be stupid. But also like my feed has just coincidentally built up all my friends. So it's sort of like the two merged together. And then in regards to LinkedIn, I quite often, you know, LinkedIn is a professional space. So you've got to like you word things differently. In regards to my I've got an event coming up for charity in May. And it's sort of a thing, you know, to promote that, to promote myself. Um, and it's also, you know, I quite like to say LinkedIn, you get to show off a bit, if that makes sense. You've got to sort of be really big-headed, which I didn't like doing at first, but then I saw what everyone else was doing on LinkedIn, and you know, you sort of end up getting into it, and there's a bit of a sort of thrill and a rush to LinkedIn, which I quite like. Um, Another thing is that I think is really important is like I'm not a fan of using Facebook to post, but things like Facebook groups, find stuff that's related to your career and your profession. Um, and there's quite a lot of good stuff on there. Like people will chat, and you know, even if I don't post anything in the group, I look and see what's been talked about, and you can get good ideas and see what other people are doing. So I think it's slept on a little bit, but like you know, Facebook groups, and there will always be a Facebook group for whatever career or industry you're going into, 100%. And I think it's good to sort of like, you know, just connect with other people who are in that industry or have been and done that and, you know, a bit sort of a step ahead of whatever you're doing.
yeah, I think you're right. It's like for different, those kind of like social media channels you use in different ways because, you know, people focus on like finding different information from, for example, on Facebook or through Instagram. Instagram is probably more like photo based or you know like video based, but for LinkedIn it's more about like networking and professionally you connect with you know people at work, and also James, you're right, it's like for the some of the job, the nature of the job is like you have this kind of daily interaction with you know people at work, and the way you talk to people, the way you know like email people, and that's also the way you sort of like build up your sort of like a professional profile as well. And also, I know, Steph, you mentioned something really important here. It's like as a social media manager, sometimes you don't really have your social media, you know, personally, sort of like try to stay away from it. So my next question is for Joseph again. I mean, like you probably need to get used to me calling you Joseph here. So, as you said, you work in entertainment industry. I believe reputation and visibility, they are like really important if you want to build up a career in the long run to survive and also to succeed as well. So, what kind of like strategy or ways that make you feel like it's actually quite helpful for you to um, increase your visibility and credibility? And
Oh,
also, yeah, I would like you to answer the first bit of the question.
oh, I think, I mean, first of all, it's a very scrutinizing industry, entertainment. I've seen a lot of people fall quickly, or, one little slip up can, cancel culture as well. Like one little slip up can really screw your career up. Um, I mean, I think, oh, it's such a difficult one to answer. With credibility wise, I think you've got to be clever
Hmm.
with what you're doing. Um, you've got to stay on brand to what your brand is. I've seen people who try and flip too much to different things, and it just does not work in the industry. You're trying to do too much, stick to something, or people get called out for copying things, or you're trying to be this. At the end of the day, the industry is fairly big, but there's more people in it than what is needed, if that makes sense. So we're all competing, so it is cutthroat, and people will be out there to replace you.
Yeah,
Um, However, I think it's also important to sort of gain friends, if that makes sense, and people who do have your back, as it were. You know,
yeah,
it, you've got to make connections to build yourself up, if that makes sense. It's a lot different to when I first started. Within the past like 4, 5 years, a lot has changed and it is a lot more cutthroat. And I see people who are doing what I did 4 years ago who it's so much harder for them, if that makes sense, to sort of get into the industry. And I quite like to class myself as a little mentor, so I do help people along the way, who are just starting out. But I mean, it is a lot different to even 4 years ago. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
I
in
don't know if
terms
I
of
answered the question there.
no,
Sorry.
I mean that's interesting because you mentioned about mentorship. I mean, like it's quite important because like for people at the beginning at your early career stage, you probably find that you don't really know where to start, and it's very like overwhelmed as well. And you got like someone as a play a mentor role, sort of like to let you know you need to do your social media often, you need to do this and have this kind of like outfit, or like this is the way you do your makeup, and that's like how you create your persona on stage, and also how you're going to cope with the on stage and off stage.
It's quite
Yeah,
interesting actually, because someone last night asked me, who is fairly new to Liverpool. I wouldn't say new to sort of the entertainment industry, but sort of fairly young with it. Um, Had asked me, I've been offered like a trial gig at this venue. Do I do it? And I was like, no, don't. I was like, because if you do that, you'll be stuck at that venue. They're hated. It's one of those things is, the tiny little bits of advice that myself or other people who have been doing it a bit longer have gained, we can pass on to other people.
yeah,
If that makes sense, because it is such a, in any industry that you're in, experiences, if
it's
not
important, it's key.
so
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah, so my next question is for staff because I know you've been in social media for so long, and you sort of like witness the change in social media. So what's the biggest change in terms of like the way people use like social media channel and the way people use, these in a professional way, to sort of like promote themselves or to network or to create their professional profile. So what is the biggest change here? And also, um, in terms of building a strong like personal brand, in terms of like to be competitive. So what are those kind of key elements to for the strong brand from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think I would say that the one of the biggest challenges at the minute is just the volume of content online, and likewise people's attention span when you're trying to connect with them online. I think like I read in an article the other week that you literally have the time for someone, it takes to someone to blink to get their attention before they scroll past your content online, if we're thinking about something like TikTok. So I would say like making sure that you're creating content online that's like cutting through that noise is one of the biggest challenges. Controversially, it's also a bit of an opportunity because within these like massive online communities, there are so many like micro communities that if you are creating content that taps into one of those, you can have like potentially reach a massive audience and have some really meaningful interactions. So I would say that yeah, making sure you're creating content that taps into specific audiences, niches is really important. I think for people to create a strong brand online, you need to know firstly like what you want to be known for. What's when someone thinks of you, what are they associating with you? And then you need to just have a real clear like drive and purpose behind each piece of content that you're putting out there. And it should all link back to that, what you want to be known for. And you just need to really build that consistency.
In terms of reaching out to people, for example, on LinkedIn or on, like TikTok or on Instagram, that's pretty much depends on what kind of industry you work in. So how you mentioned about the attention. So how can we get attention from people? Like sometimes the important people, the high profile, people in the industry, they may receive 100 emails, like, or, 100 messages per day, and people all want to connect to them. So how could we, make sure we can, stand out and make sure we grab their attention?
I think it's like that thing of where you can apply to 1,000 jobs, but it's not worth doing if you're sending off the same application. You really need to personalize each and every interaction, I would say, to make yourself stand out, and connect with them on like a human level
Mhm.
first. You know, find something about that person that's like inspired you and lead with that. People love hearing nice things about themselves. So that's probably a good intro. And I would say yeah, like connecting with someone on a human level first, I think is really important. If you're looking to like learn more about their career, let them know that and take them for a coffee or a quick call, 5 minutes. You never know what might happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that's from our perspective, individual perspective, how to approach to others. But James, I know you mentioned about you sort of like you supported recruitment and also assessment team, like to go through applications. So from recruiters' perspective, or like the employer perspective, so what kind of personal brand or professional profiles really stand out?
Yeah. So I think showing that you're like interested, committed, and knowledgeable about where you're applying, I think is vital to separate you from the crowd. Um, like Steph said, you'd be surprised how many people just copy and paste CVs and applications. So just tailoring it a little bit to each place you're applying for, and even just dropping a couple of nuggets of knowledge can literally put you a step above the crowd instantly. But I think above all, I said it before, but when you're doing interviews and things, just being authentically you and staying true to who you are is really important. It's easy to see when people are maybe like not being true to themselves. And I think talking about your interests and passions, even if the person interviewing you doesn't have the same passions, I think connecting, as Steph said again, on a human level is really helpful. So yeah. I think as well, having some relevant experience to draw upon is pretty key, but it doesn't have to be in the same industry or the same job that they're doing. For instance, I remember I did an assessment centre a couple of months ago, and I remember one person was helping out with their parents' farm or something. I think they were helping to run their parents' farm, and while obviously it's not exactly relevant to automotive, the examples that they were given and the things they were talking about showed that they, can take the initiative and were accountable for you could stay accountable for their actions and things. So yeah.
Lovely. I mean, like you also mentioned about like before this panel talk, you mentioned to me like the way you found your job is like you literally did some research, on the company and you applied for the job. So in terms of like job seeking and so what would be the best way to sort of like to do the research and then found the one that suits you and then to tailor your CV or application?
Yeah, I think maybe placement years I thought were very competitive. I know this is for postgrads, isn't it? Really, but placement years I thought were very competitive. So I think the way I found mine was on rate your placement or whatever, just making sure that other people enjoyed it. I think when you're after graduation, you want to be applying to places that interest you, I guess, and that you'll be happy working at. So for me, I thought about where would I want to learn more about and work, what really drives me, and then applied to my favorite companies there. But pretty much that's how it went. Um, yeah, I think using sites like Rate My Placement, um, you know, word of mouth, but people who've been there before and seeing what they can offer you, I think is important when applying for jobs.
I think all of you mentioned about authenticity. It's like being authentic. But my question is, we sometimes found, we sounds a little bit different, especially in email or, like on LinkedIn or online. So my question is like, how do you stay authentic, but at the same time being professional at work? And also, like, have you ever had this kind of moment that you really need to draw the line between your personal identity and also your professional identity? So I think you probably all touched this a little bit. So I'll start with Steph.
Yeah, I think for me it's a bit of an easy one because like working in social media, it is kind of a creative and, chaotic, funny, like really, crazy kind of industry. And so there's not that pressure there to be extremely professional all the time. You do kind of have to be that person like going into meetings, like coming up with the crazy ideas, and thinking about what people like people are going to relate to or find funny and like where the brand can interact with that. So I think for me, the difficulty, I think I mentioned it earlier, was like finding time to like step away from social media.
Mhm.
And, I do that in just like making sure I have a work phone and a personal phone and that I would get when I was working for the university or higher education content coming in on my like personal phone. Sometimes you can't help that. And it's interesting because it's what you're working on. But like where possible, you just try and like draw that line and make sure like time away from work is, time spent on yourself as well.
Yeah. Joseph?
Um, I sort of really struggled with separating the two.
Mhm.
Through one of the events I did, I got offered, a part-time position for a charity. It was just 2 months as like an events management sort of thing. It was only part-time, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it. Um, and I realized that sort of that professional environment wasn't the best thing it wasn't my cup of tea, I've got to say. Um, I couldn't, because I've been out of it for so long with the professional environment, that I just could not gauge the two very well. You see, like at the moment, I work for myself, and sort of the events and the gigs that I do, and even my social media stuff. I'm quite lucky to be sort of like a friendly relationship, which probably hasn't been completely beneficial for me because it's made it very difficult for me to sort of split the two in half. Um, but I mean, a lot of the stuff that I end up doing is usually through making friends. And something that I would quite like to point out as well is in person is always so much better than online because you can make a proper connection with people. Um, a lot of the stuff I've done is through, sort of making friends with people, making connections, networking, but in person. So yeah.
Yeah, I like this. It's like sometimes we sort of like we forgot like we can meet people in person. Like we
Yeah.
do a lot of things online at this point, and as you said, it's true. It's like a face-to-face
Yeah.
conversation actually works
The thing,
really well, to be honest. Yeah,
you've got to be tactical. One of the venues I work in had a new manager. No one had known who it was. So I ended up like, chatting to them like on a friendly basis. I was like, oh, well, when's your next day off? We'll go out for a drink. And my friend went to me, why are you going out for a drink with the new manager? And I was like, just watch this space. Next thing you know, I'm getting another gig here, cover shifts, this, that, and the other. And I was like, you've got to do you've got to be clever about things. You have to.
yeah,
I mean, but that was an example of me using my personal life and sort of my professional life, mixing them together. But I think that's where I sort of struggle a little bit to separate the two, if
yeah.
that makes
But
sense.
that also works for you. I mean, like that's probably the nature of entertainment industry. Like you
Uh,
have to be there and be yourself, and also do the work at the same time.
it's
But yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is sort of like schmoozing, as it were. If you make friends with people, they are subconsciously gonna give you priority.
yeah.
If that makes sense, you're gonna be like you're gonna benefit from it. So I would also my advice to anyone is try and do as much in-person networking as you can because you never know who you're gonna meet.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like, it's not only for like entertainment industry. It's like even though we network with someone, offline, we always follow up like an email afterwards, sort of like to sort of build that this can nurture this relationship, maybe
Yeah.
ask for another coffee or something.
You need to
So
make it personal and then it lasts longer. It is like a stronger one, if
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So what about you, James? How do you stay authentic but also, being professional? And I know you used to own your own business and you used to be like an entrepreneur as well. So how you shift between, being an entrepreneur but also working full time at Toyota?
Yeah, yeah, completely agree with what Joseph said. To be honest, I think sometimes in the office anyway, I feel like I don't know if you've seen the show Severance, where they've got like an innie and an outie. Sometimes I feel like that, but I do think it's like important to integrate work and personal identities, but to an extent in an office environment anyway. I think it helps retaining your personality, sharing and asking about interests and hobbies with colleagues. For sure, it makes work life more enjoyable, but it also builds like mutual ground and trust with your colleagues, especially when you're just starting out in a new role or something. Um, I've also found, like Joseph said, meeting up with people outside of the work environment is helpful to build trust and personal connections, which which then I guess when you come back into your office environment, it's beneficial there with your professional life as well. Um, yeah, I think connecting with people that maybe you don't need to at the moment always comes in handy, and I think as Joseph said, building that personal relationship with them on a human level, not just talking about work, but also your hobbies and interests, and just having a conversation with them is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, like that's correct. And also sometimes when you have the conversation, you need to at least have a purpose. And I mean, like it's nice to have like all kind of, making friends with people, but at the same time, is this for work or is this for like a professional purpose?
Mm.
You need to know what exactly you need from this conversation and make sure you end up, having their email address or have like something done or like have the outcome from the conversation as well. So
Yeah.
but we know into back to social media bit. My question is for social media, for like doing this for work, how what's the portion of this for your professional life? I mean, that you probably say 100% because you manage social media, but also how do you keep the consistency of your brand? What's the strategy for this? I mean, probably online and also offline to make people to talk to people online and through LinkedIn or through Instagram, but also make people in the office or like outside the office. How do you keep the consistency? Make people feel like this is you. This is the person I know from work. Um, Anyone want to volunteer to answer the question first?
I think, oh, I don't know. I would say with regards to Instagram, I like to, if I'm posting on social media on Instagram, I'd say that's probably my main one from like sort of like my entertainer side, like the drag queen side. I like to think, what would I say to this in person to my friends? How can I make a joke about this? What exactly would come out of my mouth? And then if it is appropriate enough, I will sort of put that as a caption or whatever. Um, I quite find, I have sort of like little spells of a sort of like an energetic, stupid, cannot concentrate, and I go, this is the perfect time to create something engaging that is going to make people have a little giggle.
Yeah.
If there is some promo at there's quite often at one of the clubs I work in, they do some promo and they have this marketing team that is like a head office one that haven't a clue. And it's one of those things like they always get stuff wrong or something stupid. So I take the mick with it and post this and like it's somewhat funny and then you get people swiping up. And just like funny little stuff. I was at a venue in Neston and someone, I have no idea how someone managed to get this on video. It was brilliant. Of me, someone had lit a cigarette right in front of me in the middle of the venue, and there's me like screaming at them. So I cut off this like it was literally like a 3 second one. It's like, oh, get out. And they scream. And I had so much engagement from that posting out on my story. I must have had about 60 people in my DMs just laughing at it. Going, this is stupid. And that's one of those things. It's with just take the mick out of yourself a bit. You've got to that. I suppose that's my brand, though.
Yeah, I mean, like the reason why I ask this question is because at this point, like we have ChatGPT, the AI can do a lot of work for us for social media. So the challenge is like how you make
Mm.
those social media posts, or like the content sounds like you.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to. What would you say when in regards to that? I always just go, what would I say to my friends if it's funny and it's also appropriate? Then I'll post it. If
Yeah,
that makes sense. So I suppose that's my branding, though, is the sort of the stupid sort of side of it, and that's what I like to let people see. Obviously, I can't get away with that on LinkedIn as much. So LinkedIn, I have to pretend, I put a suit on. I've gone to an office. I mean, that makes
yeah.
sense. I like to sort of
You
make
switch to your professional
you've got to
role.
also as well look at who is using that platform.
Yeah, you
Whereas
need to
I've got,
understand your audience.
yeah, like the people who follow my Instagram are mainly there to go, oh, where's Jen tonight? Or I've met them in the club and I thought they were like entertaining, whatever. So it's different. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's more about professional trying to get. So you do, I think one of the most important things is to look at the audience and look who is following you on what platforms and what you're going to get from each platform. One, I'm going to get people coming to see my shows. The other one is sort of what other shows can I get, or what other entertainment and career stuff I can get. So you've got to separate the two.
Yeah. So what about you, James?
I think you mentioned it earlier. Like it's not just LinkedIn, Instagram, and social media platforms, but when you're speaking to people over email, a lot of the times that's their first impression of you, and they might not have met you before, and they can't see who you are or what you look like or anything like that. So I think it's important to be not too formal, but not too informal either, like personable and relatable. And then you can kind of carry that over to LinkedIn as well and be consistent across the two. But yeah, I think it's important to get your emails right as well.
Yeah, exactly. Make it friendly, but at the same time, you need to mention the business you want to
that's
mention. Yeah.
that's it. Like
Well,
I think. Sorry,
No,
I
no,
just imagine if
I
go
just
on.
want to say as
you
well, I
go.
think in regards to what James has just said there, I think that's really interesting because, I was always taught you've got to be really formal with emails and stuff like throughout sort of my education. And now it's like if you put that, it feels weird, if that makes sense. You can't be too formal. I think James is bang on there with that. I think with the
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't want to be everything's changed so much, you don't want to be too formal because it just makes people feel weird, I think. Now
yeah,
it's
yeah,
you're right.
I'd agree.
Yeah,
I think it's the context as well. Like if obviously if you're speaking to a customer or something like that, maybe you want to be a bit more formal. But then
yeah,
if you're speaking to your work colleagues and maybe people you want to get to know a bit better, then as you say, sometimes it feels a little bit weird if you're too formal. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. Steph, from your perspective?
Yeah, I would agree. I think just to add on what's been said, that building that consistency, sometimes it's about making sure, like for me at work, it's making sure that I'm like maintaining, doing all these things to make sure I'm maintaining who I'm saying that I am to people. So if I'm saying I'm a social media expert, I need to make sure I'm like in the habit of like regularly checking what's new in the social media world and making sure that I'm like maintaining positive habits that mean that I can like show up as that person every day. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
I
I
think you're right. It's like we all need to know our job, like the role we're gonna play. It's like we have this kind of job description. We have people's expectation from the work as well. Like this is something like we need to fulfill as well at work. So I'm aware of time. So I'm gonna ask like my final question, and then we're open to our audience. So for those, I know some of the audience they're like a student. They may like just at the beginning of their career, so they may find, building up their own, finding their own tone, building up their professional profile can be overwhelmed. So what kind of like advice would you give them, in terms of, help them to find their voice and also to be professional at work?
I would say that they should know that they already have a personal brand, like whether they know they think they do or not, they do. Somebody you've met will recognize you as this person or that person, like and it might be helpful to just ask your friends, ask your colleagues in the workplace, like what do you think about when you think about me? And whether you like it or not, you might be the person that shows up late or the one who comes like with ideas or funny, thoughtful. Like that is your personal brand. And then you have to think whether you like it or not, and then what you can do to change that if you need to. And then it's like I'd also suggest looking at people that inspire you as well. What are they doing to build their brand? And whether there's any insights you can take from those people as well.
Amazing. James?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Steph said. I guess everyone has a personal brand, even if you don't know it. and as we mentioned all the way through, being authentic to yourself is really important. So something that's helped me though, I think, is the importance of networking, I suppose, and connecting with people. There's a model that someone told me right when I started called the PIE model, PIE, and it's like performance, image, and exposure. So it's like 60% of your like people who are promoted have good exposure to people, so who knows you. 30% is image, so how others see you, and then only 10% is your performance at your job. So I think exposing yourself to as many people as possible is really important for your brand. Yeah.
This is brilliant. Thank you. Joseph?
I think what James has said as well is sort of perfect, really. And just to add to it, I would say to anyone, just say yes to anything. Like if someone offers you an opportunity, say yes. If you don't like it, you can leave. I
Mm,
think a really good thing is if you've got FOMO with something, you know, stick with that. You want the fear of missing out. Because if you get there and it turns out you're not missing out, that's fine, leave. But say yes to anything, any opportunity, whether someone's asked you, oh, can you come and meet my friends for a drink, um, or I want to come to something like this. Like, say yes to anything if you're being invited to it, because you don't know who you're gonna meet, you don't know who's watching you. You don't know
yeah,
what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to learn because I was quite a FOMO person when it came to stuff like that. And I'm actually so glad because it benefited me so much. I met so many people from it. Even like a night out with a friend who's meeting different people, even if that's 3 more followers that I've gained on Instagram, I'm still benefiting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of you are right. It's like, I mean, like James, I like your the model you mentioned, but at the same time, I think it is the most important thing all of you mentioned already. It's like you already had a brand. No need to overthink about building your personal brand. You need to be you. And when you're at work, you naturally became a professional. And also like that's pretty much depends on what kind of like job you're doing and what kind of industry you're in. And I think that the most important thing is like being authentic, to be honest. So I'm gonna open this to our audience to see if they any questions. So if you have any questions to the panel, please feel free to um, uh, pop the question in the our chat box. Um, and yeah, and let's see if there are any questions. Seems a bit quiet in our chat box. Maybe if you want to have any comments or you want to share your experience, how you manage your social media channels, feel free to share in the chat box. Right. So while we're waiting, I want to ask like a simple question. So because I know James and Steph, you're not based in Liverpool, you're based in London. So after graduation, what the most um, things you missed Liverpool?
The people.
What do you miss? Yeah, people.
The people. I think Scousers, 100%. Yeah.
So what's the difference between people in Liverpool and people
Oh,
in London?
it's like when you're in Liverpool, you walk down the street and everyone will say hello to you. When you're in or where I am now, you can walk around the streets and you wouldn't say talk to anyone for days. It's quite cold.
Yeah, people pretty much like focus on themselves. So what
That's
about
it.
you, Steph?
Yeah, I'd
Oh,
say the
you just
same.
moved in London, yeah.
Yeah, I loved living in Liverpool for another 7 years after I graduated, and I was very sad to leave in the end, but it was like a career choice more than anything. But yeah, I think it's people like that shared sense of like humor that you get up north that is sometimes a bit lacking down south, I hate to say. But yeah, really, really love and miss Liverpool.
Yeah, I know, like Joseph, you're based in Liverpool, so my question for you is like, what make you stay?
I think I sort of agree with James and Steph there. I mean, it's the people really. And I sort of, with my, whilst I was at uni, I built up a career at the same time and I had a couple of businesses and whatever. So, I mean, it just made no sense for me to leave. I sort of made roots here and all my friends were here. So it was one of those things, A, I didn't want to leave, and B, it wouldn't have made sense for my career. So that's why I stayed.
Yeah.
Plus, I
Yeah.
just love Liverpool. It's a big city in a small area, which is brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, like also, especially when you sort of like especially when you build up your career, like people are the key, and those are the relationship you can build up, in terms of developing your own career. And so I just see that we got a question here. So here's a question for, I think, for the panel. So is there anything in your own personal brands that on you'd like to build on or improve?
I think it's sort of my response to that question would be um I'm gonna say I don't know. I think subconsciously my personal brand always builds and changes. Quite often following trends, if that makes sense. It's like a subconscious thing. So I personally find it quite hard to identify what is going to be next. But then once it's happened, I've usually sort of identified it, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for me, it's not an easy one to actually pinpoint what I want to do next, if that makes sense. I think actually, to be fair, I would love to say I like to focus on career development with everything. So what my next step in my career is, and I think that probably does link into the personal branding side of things. But I usually focus on something else, and the personal branding sort of follows, or it comes in link with it.
Oh, sorry, I tried to make James as a co-host. He just left the call. Um, so we got another comment here. So it says, no way we can control how others see you, which is so true. And you just be yourself and improve to your better version. Don't you think brand, especially frame, is somewhat accidental? Is this to maybe I think this is question to um Joseph?
Yeah, I think I agree with the first half of that completely. Brand fame is somewhat accidental. Yeah, I suppose it probably is. Um, but I think it was quite interesting, like people who I lived with in like whilst I was at uni and stuff like that, and sort of family members. It was always like, oh, you were born for the stage, you were born for this. Someone goes, oh, you're going to be famous one day, and obviously that's like a really exaggerated version of that. But yeah, I would say partially accidental, but also you've got to work for it, if that makes sense. So, you know, I wouldn't be where I was if I wasn't working for it. But then also, I would say a lot of stuff has been completely accidental that I've done. Um, which is a lot of it was luck of the draw. I've done TV and stuff like that, and a lot of that was just complete luck. So that was accidental. But I worked hard to get myself to that point where I was in the opportunity to be considered to be lucky to get into it, if that makes sense. So I think the two come in hand in hand.
Yeah. What about Steph? Have you got any comments or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would agree with what Joseph said. I think that, like, to an extent, to be authentic, like you are being your true self, and like you can't really control how people perceive you. But then I think a lot of work goes into like distilling down into that, and then finding ways to communicate it in an authentic way as well. And then like maintaining that consistently, whether it's online or in person, like a lot of work and even strategic thought goes into that. And what we might see as an audience as is being like, oh, so easy and like authentic. There's actually a lot of thought and planning that's gone into it behind the scenes. So the best
Yeah.
authentic people are the ones where you think it's accidental because that's how authentic it is, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. James back. So James, do you want to share anything? Have you heard about the question?
Can you repeat it, please? Sorry, my connection dropped out.
Oh, there's a comment in the chat box saying like, no way we can control how others sees you,
Oh,
and you just be yourself and improve to your better version. Don't you think brand, especially fame, is somewhat accidental?
yeah, similar to what Joseph said, I guess. I think it is accidental to an extent, but you have to be working and speaking to the right people to make that accident happen, I suppose. Um, and it says that you just be yourself and improve to your better version. 100% agree with that. Like if I was my authentic self 4 years ago, it wouldn't be the same person that I am today. I think you make mistakes and learn and keep evolving. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it is true. Like, we can't really control that. I mean, it's building yourself like the brand is a journey, like like we all in that journey, and we'll um you see like one there must be like a moment you realize, okay, this is who we are. And it's sort of like I also had this kind of feeling. It's like sometimes I don't know, I don't feel like I'm finding my careers, I'm building my careers, but like to some there's like a turning point made one day you feel like, oh, this is my career. So I think that's the similar to having your personal brand that you will figure it out, like one day, and this is your brand that you know who you are. So I want to say a big thank you to our panel. I don't think we got more questions or comments here. So thanks everyone for joining us, and also like I shared some upcoming alumni events. So those are two online events and the one in person in Liverpool. And if you're interested in those, please feel free to click the links and also book your tickets. And also, I popped the LinkedIn links for all our three speakers. So if you want to ask them any questions or you want to connect with them on LinkedIn, please feel free to do it. Thank you so much. I want to say a big thank you again for our panel. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and also thanks for your time. I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. You
thank
can
you.
leave the call now.
Thanks.
Thank you.